Good day, students. My name is Sydney Ase Emmanuel. We're going to be looking at basic technology with the theme, building. And then we're going to discuss the topic, types of building and materials. Now, what are our objectives for this lesson? We want to be sure that at the end of this lesson, you, the students, you are able to identify the different types of buildings, explain why buildings are important, identify the uses of buildings, identify the kind of materials that are used in buildings. Now, first, we need to know what these buildings are all about. What is a building? A building is a structure set up where we live in, we do our work, we school, and carry out some other functions. Now, buildings are of great importance to us. Why? Because they provide us with shelter, okay? They also serve as protection, and also gives us room to store our valuables, and so on. Now, buildings are constructed in such a way that they suit their uses and also suit the environment that they are erected. Now, we're going to discuss some importance of these buildings. The first importance of buildings is that building offers protection against harsh weather, like sunshine, heavy rain, okay, storm. Okay, the buildings serve as protection for us against these weather conditions. And again, building provide us a safe place where we can store our valuables. Buildings also provide a medium where official engagements can be carried out. Building also provide a place where we can store our agricultural products like animals and crop yields. Building also provide a medium for residential, commercial, and industrial activities. Now, we need to be able to identify buildings. There are two ways that we can identify our buildings. First, we can identify buildings by their designs, the way they are designed. And then secondly, we can identify buildings by the kind of materials used to erect them. We said buildings are identified based on their construction designs and the kind of materials that are used to erect them. So first, we're going to discuss the buildings according to their construction designs. We have buildings that are called bungalow. We have some called duplex. We have detached and semi-detached buildings. We have huts. We have high-rise buildings. And then we have skyscrapers. First, we're going to consider the bungalow. The bungalow is a kind of building that is mostly roofed at the ground floor level. The bungalow is mostly a ground floor. It has just one floor, okay? And it could also be in form of a self-contained or one-bedroom flat. Could also be two-bedroom flats, and so on. It can have more flats, okay? And then it is designed to accommodate a single family unit. A typical example of a bungalow, okay? We have another one here, typical example of how a bungalow building looks like. Now, the next one is duplex. Okay, duplex are compact story buildings. Take notes, this word. They are compact story buildings that are usually roofed at the first floor level. Okay, we have duplexes that are of maybe 3-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flats, and so on. Generally, for duplexes, you have the living room, the dining, the kitchen, the store, and some conveniences, and maybe the guest room at the ground floor level. And then we also have the bedrooms and maybe a little sitting room, okay, a private sitting room at the first floor level. So most duplexes are designed like that. Okay, that's a typical example of a duplex. Okay, that's another one, typical example of how a duplex building looks like. Okay, detached buildings. Now, these are mainly made up of 2 or more separate apartments, okay, put together. You can have 2 or more separate apartments put together to form one building, okay? And then these kind of buildings are mainly for residential purposes. And they can also be in form of a bungalow or a story building. Now, that's a typical example of a detached building. Now, let's move on to discuss semi-detached buildings. Now, these are buildings that have 2 or more housing units built with a common wall boundary. Now, for semi-detached buildings, we have 2 separate apartments put together to form one building, but they have been demarcated with a common wall. We can have semi-detached buildings that are in form of bungalow. We can also have semi-detached buildings that are in form of a story building. Now, for that of the bungalow, we have a common wall that separates the 2 apartments. And then for the story building, we might have a staircase that can separate the 2 apartments. But they all come together to form one building. Okay? In most cases, the design of the building apartment are the same and the building is symmetrical, like I earlier said. Okay? Symmetrical. Whatever you have on the right-hand side is what you have on the left-hand side. That is for the semi-detached building. Now, that's a typical example of a semi-detached building. You can see we have a wall here that separates the 2 apartments. We have apartment 1 here, and then we have apartment 2, okay, of same design. Whatever you have on the left-hand side is what you have on the right-hand side. And then you have a common wall that separates the both apartments, okay? That's for bungalow. Now, this one is for the story building, okay? We have one apartment here, and then we have another apartment here. And, of course, we might have a staircase in the middle. All right, the next one is huts. Now, huts are ancient design, ancient buildings, mostly round in shape, okay? And then they are being built with what? Mud, okay? They are usually round in shape. And we find most of these buildings in the villages, okay? We can have different huts come together to form one village. And in cases like that, most times we discover that there is a particular one, okay, that is fairly large and rectangular, or it can be square-shaped. Now, that one serves the village head. That can be used for the village head. Now, due to the uniqueness of these huts and the round shape, most times they are used in relaxation and entertainment spots. For example, the suya joints, suya spots in hotels, gardens, parks, and so on. We discovered that despite the fact that we use thatch, okay, as the roof, we still have, in some cases, they are being constructed with other additional materials like timber and metals. And then we still have the thatch as the roof. Now, that's a typical example of a hut. We have this thatch as the roof, and then we have the walls built with mud or clay sometimes. Now, for high-rise buildings are tall buildings, mostly residential buildings, but they are tall, and these kind of buildings are very common in European countries. Okay, that's a typical example of a high-rise building. Like I said, it's used basically for residential purposes. You have different apartments, as you can see. You have different apartments here, 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 and so on. Now, the next one is skyscrapers. Now, these are very tall buildings with at least 45 stories. They are not less than 45 stories. Okay, and these kind of buildings are designed purely for offices and governmental activities, and they are mostly found in developed countries. Okay, so these are typical examples of skyscrapers. Okay, we have one here, another skyscraper here, another skyscraper here, and so on. These kind of buildings are commonly used in the European countries. The next way we can identify our buildings is by the kind of materials that are used to erect this building. We have buildings that are erected with mud. We call them mud buildings. We have buildings that are erected with brick. We call them brick buildings. We also have buildings that are erected with sandcrete. Okay, we call this kind of buildings sandcrete buildings. And we also have buildings that are erected with wood. And these kind of buildings are called wood buildings. Now let's move on to discuss them one after the other. First is the mud building. Now the mud building are buildings erected with loamy or clay soil. Okay, these are the kind of buildings that are erected with loamy or clay soil. And they produce very thick walls. Okay, they usually don't exceed ground floor level. You can have some mud buildings that have maybe first floor, but most times they don't exceed ground floor level. Now that's a typical example of a mud building. You can see the material that is being used here. Okay, it's clay or loamy soil, like I said earlier. The next one is brick buildings. Now, for brick buildings, like I said, we use brick as the material to build or to erect brick buildings. Now, these kind of buildings are molded with dry mortar.